Welcome to Ask the Experts. Good to have you here this evening. It is Tuesday night, another night to engage in dialogue, to answer questions that you may have, to help you solve your problems, to get you on a path to fulfillment in your relationship. My name is Asani Pettiford, and I am the co-founder of Couples Academy. I am a marriage coach and infidelity recovery specialist, and this is what we do every single evening, Monday through Thursday. I hope that you're enjoying this show. I hope that you're getting what you can get out of it. And let's jump in. Let's dive deep. Feel free to announce yourself. We would love to know where you're logging in from so that we can acknowledge you. But we have a number of questions that we're going to jump into, and we're going to get started right away. Sandra says, how to resolve marriage issues after an affair in long distance, since husband had to go abroad over half a year for his job. Affair happened last time he was gone, and we had a year now between. Okay. So an affair happened, but now he's overseas. How do we restore it? Well, the same way you would do so if you both were in the same geographical location. It just reminds me of a couple. It was a military husband who was serving overseas. He was in Guam. The wife was here in Atlanta, Georgia, and we did an intensive, and we had to adjust time slots or time zones, I should say, because he was several hours ahead. And so, it was trying, but we made it happen. And so we went through a virtual private marriage intensive with follow-up sessions, and they had their work day, their play day. They had conversations that they had to have, assignments that had to be fulfilled. Because of the power of technology, there's really no excuse. Now, if your husband is overseas and he does not have access to communicate for a number of months, because depending upon what his assignment is and where he's going, that presents a problem. Well, you're kind of on pause, if you will, till you have access to technology, but through letter writing and things of that nature, something can be done. And so if that's your situation, reach out to us or any counselor that you find that can accommodate you. There are counselors and coaches now that do work virtually all over the world. And so I would say things don't have to stop if you are in two separate locations, because it's a very normal thing for the couples that we work with. A lot of times people live overseas, their spouse is here at home, or vice versa, and we go through the process just as if they were in the same room. So hopefully that answers your question. You could be reading books, you could be watching videos, sharing them, discussing them, using the power of text, Marco Polos, whatever form of dialogue or platform for communication you would use. Just make it purposeful and intentional in your healing process. So thanks for that question. Corliss asks, would you say that drug addiction and cheating can go hand in hand in a person that cheats constantly in the marriage? Absolutely. It absolutely can go hand in hand. I mean, typically, if a person is involved in a destructive behavior, usually is clustered together with other things that can potentially be destructive as well. And if you can then rationalize or justify why you are doing what you're doing, okay, if it's some type of addiction, drug addiction, alcohol addiction, whatever it is, you can make a case and make an argument for doing something else that is destructive. It's just like, well, I'm doing this. What's the difference if I do that? I mean, wrong is wrong, right? And so, yeah, there can be a correlation. And I hope you hear me emphasizing the word can, because it doesn't mean that we can just indict the person. But yes, typically if one person is involved in one thing, they are involved in other things that are potentially destructive. Okay. Here's another question from Jerry. My wife and I are going through a lot and have not been intimate in any way in months, not even a hug. We're not arguing or anything. There are things that have happened in the past that has her feeling this way. And so it seems like, there's a lot of unresolved issues. One of the first areas that couples struggle with when they're going through marital problems is physical intimacy. That's one of the first things that's affected. It's just like the candy shop is closed because I don't feel comfortable. I don't feel safe. There are unresolved issues. These behaviors continue to be exhibited in the relationship. And for me to continue to extend myself and offer myself up, it's almost like I'm rewarding you for bad behavior. That's the perspective that oftentimes a spouse can have. And so What I would say is, are you going back to address those unresolved issues? Are you going through a legitimate process? In all honesty, in the beginning of my marriage, when we were in need for counseling, that's the last thing I wanted to do. I'm like, why don't we fix it on our own? Why do we have to go to some other man? Why do we have to, expose what's going on in our household to somebody else? We can figure it out ourselves. I was that DIY guy. I'm sure we could find the answer in a book. I'm sure we could find an answer in a video. And so there was a resistance on my part, and things did not improve. Things got progressively worse. And so I would say, listen, maybe it's time to dive back into some of those former issues. Maybe it's time to seek counseling, to join a ministry, do something. Because once relational issues are resolved, it opens up one's heart and mind for more. Intimacy can be reestablished. And if you want physical intimacy, you must first have an emotional, an intellectual, and a spiritual intimacy. All right, we've got Lakeisha Hines in the building. Glad to have you with us. I know that you just finished a session.
Yes.
Your commitment to being here. We're just answering some questions. I got another question, and I'll read this, and maybe you can weigh in on it.
Okay.
Skip. All right. There's a bunch of questions. So here we go. How can a man be so comfortable to lay down and have sex with another woman, but not comfortable enough to express how he's feeling to his wife so they can work on their relationship? I keep asking my husband this question and he can't give me an answer. He's the one who committed infidelity. What say you?
I think they're two totally separate situations. I think that communication happens in multiple ways. And I think that infidelity probably is occurring because of a previous issue. Infidelity didn't just come up overnight. There had to be some other issues leading up to that. As always, we're consistently saying that the infidelity basically just highlights the fact that there was something else going on prior to. And feeling comfortable laying with the other person, but not feeling comfortable expressing to his spouse. Well, maybe there was an issue with communication before. Maybe he tried before, but could not. Maybe you were not open to receive. Maybe he just didn't even try at all and looked outward to try to find that connection somewhere else, and it turned into a sexual affair. Often that is what happens. It starts off with just communicating, never having the intent to have a sexual affair or an affair at all. But then it turns into that, grows into that, evolves into that. So it could be a situation where he hasn't talked to his spouse for multiple reasons. Like I said, maybe he tried and it didn't go well, or maybe he didn't try at all. I don't know, but it's two totally separate situations. And his experience with that affair partner typically is very different from the experience that he has with you as his spouse.
Yeah, that's a great answer, Lakeisha. I'm going to reread the question and point out a key word. How can a man be so comfortable to lay down and have sex with another woman, but not be comfortable enough to express how he's feeling to his wife? Well, the answer is in the question. He's not comfortable. For that affair partner, there are no bills that need to be paid together, no major issues that need to be discussed, no problems with raising the kids or making certain decisions, no past hurts, past pains. There's no history that has made him uncomfortable. With her, it's easy. There's a sense of newness, right? There's intrigue. There's getting to know. There's that phase that you go through is like where you're like intrigued by the possibility of what can be. Whereas when dealing with your spouse, any conversation could be a triggering conversation, loaded terms, we misinterpret, we have faulty assumptions, we have all the unresolved issues in the past that get in the way, that create the noise in terms of how we communicate in dialogue. There are these internal resistors that we struggle with that keeps us from really releasing and opening up and sharing and being vulnerable. So there's a lot of stuff there that keeps him from being comfortable with you and comfortable with her.
Right.
But yet and still, as a result of that, there's a process that you need to go through to go from uncomfortable to comfortable. And in fact, we say you got to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. That's how you transition out of that into a healthy place with your spouse. So hopefully that answered the question. Here's another question. When the affair ended in a child, but the other person does not want me involved. I'm assuming the other person will be the affair partner, doesn't want the spouse involved with the child. Married for 19 years, always wanted children. So this would be his first. What do I do when he doesn't stand up to her?
This is a continuation of what was already going on. When I say that, or when you say that the affair ended in a child, the other person does not want you involved. Well, you weren't involved. He immediately got with someone else and you were not involved in that situation. It's a continuation. They're still not having you involved. It's like they're having a whole separate relationship still, and you're not in it. It is definitely his responsibility to make sure that he cleans that situation up. He does need to stand up to her. There does have to be an agreement, an understanding. There has to be boundaries. There is no not being involved if you and your husband are still married. Like, I don't even understand how that would work. So he most certainly has to stand up to, you're saying stand up to her, but really it's, there has to be an agreement and an understanding about how you're going to be involved. And he's got to make sure that, again, there's an understanding between you and the mother of the child.
Yeah. So if you're the spouse and your spouse was unfaithful and there was a child, and now how do they parent that child? They parent that child along with you because you and your husband are a package deal. So there are no individual private conversations planning for the birth of the child, how you raise the child without you being involved if you decided that you want to stay. Now, here's the other challenge. They don't have children. If I understand what you said correctly, you said it would be his. You've always wanted to have a child, and it's his first child. So that's now. Here's the deal. I've seen this go two ways. For some people, it's even more of a sting because you had something or a child with another person that you didn't even have with me, and we don't have one yet. And now I see you having one, but yet I feel left out. And so that creates even more of a problem in terms of her ability to heal and move forward. But on the flip side, I've seen it go the other way. I've seen a couple struggle to have children. The spouse has an affair, gets another woman pregnant, and now she wants to be involved in a tremendous way because even though it was the result of a betrayal, the philosophy was, well, it's an innocent child. And I wanted the ability to love that child, care for that child, because if it's your child and we're married and we're a package deal, then I have access to and the ability to raise and care and love for that child as well. So here's the deal. What makes your process for recovery different than another's happens to be your own personality, your own belief system, the creed, the way in which you deal with certain things, your philosophy. And this is why there are general guidelines of recovery, but it's going to look specifically different depending upon who we are working with and what the details of that situation may be. Because Lakeisha, we've worked with couples in this situation. There's some couples, there's a pregnancy, so we're not sure if the child is really, if the affair partner is really the parent. Sometimes people want to rush to get a blood test to find out. Sometimes people don't want to know for fear. That's different than we're dealing with a newborn baby. That's different than the child is 5 years old. That's different than I just found out I have an 18-year-old out there that I never knew about from an affair years ago. So the way you deal with it is uniquely different based upon those circumstances.
Yeah, I just think definitely you hit the nail right on the head when you said that it definitely impacts her ability to heal and recover because they never had children. So now you have a child and it's not yours and you're being pushed out. That's one of the biggest issues that a lot of spouses talk about when there has been infidelity is that they feel left out. There was a lie, there was a betrayal, there was all this secrecy and you didn't include me. And why didn't you talk to me? And you went to this other person. So that's why I'm saying it's a continuation of that being shut out and just not feeling a part of her spouse's life. But I do want to commend her that she's wanting to be involved with this child. Because like you said, there are some that they're like, oh, absolutely not, I don't want anything to do with this child. So I feel
Mm.
like that says a lot about her and who she is, that she's even open to want to try to be involved with this child.
Absolutely. Here's another question. It's frustrating when I hear you say the infidelity is a result of a problem that was already there, especially when I didn't know there was a problem. They just make up issues to justify the betrayal. So let's unpack this a little bit, because when an affair happens, it is a result of something that either A, is going on inside of the person, B, something going on inside of the relationship, or a combination of the two. Listen, there's no such thing as a perfect marriage. There were issues, I'm sure, before this affair. I'm sure those issues for that particular person who had the affair, for him or for her, could have been a contributing factor. Now, are they placing blame and looking for an scapegoat to justify their affair? Listen, the reality is there are marital patterns that exist that can create a vulnerability in the relationship. And with that vulnerability, it can increase the probability of someone acting out, whether it be an affair, whether it be physical, emotional, verbal abuse, whether it be divorce. Because the way that we all deal with pressures that we face is different. We all have a different way of coping with it. Sometimes we engage in destructive problems, destructive patterns and behaviors. So once again, either I came into the relationship with issues, and based upon what we dealt with in a relationship, now those issues caused me to go astray and have an affair, or maybe there was a marital void in the relationship. I think it's worthy of unpacking. So the idea that it's 100% one person's fault in terms of the affair, yes. The person who had the affair has to take 100% accountability for his or her actions and decision. But when it comes to relational issues, it's never 100% all one person's fault. It is the combination between the two that creates the conflict in the first place. So I know certain things are hard to hear, certain things are stinging, but I mean, we've been doing this work for so long. And when you dig deep into things, you begin to see, okay, all right, well, that needs to be dealt with, and that was unresolved, and you were struggling with this. So it's a very complex situation, and every situation has to be looked at uniquely.
It really is. And you're right. It is difficult to hear. And I do understand what was her legendary lady. I do understand what you're saying. And I hope you heard Hassani loud and clear when he said, we are never saying that it is the betrayed spouse's fault why the other spouse chose to cheat. We have always said it is a choice. It was a conscious decision to step outside of the marriage, to be unfaithful, to lie, to cheat, whatever. We have always said that. But in addition to that, we've also always said that you have to look at the fact that there were problems prior to infidelity. People do not just go to bed and wake up one day and say, I want to cheat on my spouse, or I'm going to cheat on my spouse today. There was something leading up to. Now, she pointed out that she didn't know there was a problem. That often happens too, where there hasn't been communication and the spouse chose to go outside, turn away from you instead of turning in. So you're right. If you were not told that there was a problem, there was nothing that you could do about it. But we're saying there was a problem. That's the point that we're making. She went on to say, too, Hassani, selfishness is not a problem created in the marriage. I believed we were happy. He always said it. So why cheat and then say there's a problem? Well, maybe there's a situation where it wasn't a situation where he didn't feel necessarily happy, but maybe there was something else going on, as Hassani said, inside of him that was completely independent of you. But that's worthy of a conversation. It's worthy of bringing in a third party to help you guys identify how you got to this place.
And also for a person to say that I'm happy, all is well. just because that's what they articulate doesn't mean that that's the actual reality. Some people are very passive aggressive and they say things, they're people pleasers. They say things to keep the peace. They don't want to fight. They don't want to argue. And so as a result, that's the impression that they give, though there's another reality. I mean, when we sit through these intensives with couples, oftentimes, to your point, a spouse says, well, how come you never told me? And usually the other partner will come up with whatever reason they had for not saying, but it's something that they felt but didn't say. You know, I'm going to pull in a statement that, you know, from time to time I mention that I think is damaging and destructive to a relationship. And I hear, you know, men say it, they buy into it, women buy into it. But the whole notion of like a happy wife leads to a happy life, which is insane because there's so many men who shut down. They don't articulate how they feel. They just want to make you happy, and you are happy. You think things are well, but they've suppressed thoughts, feelings, and emotions that they don't articulate, and they act out in passive aggressive ways, which may be an affair, and then all the truth comes out.
Well, a lot of times too, I love that you said that, because I think a lot of times too, you know, for men, again, so often are taught not to talk about their emotions. They're taught not to talk about their feelings, and if they do, that is weak. If they allow themselves to be vulnerable, that they're weak, or somehow they're not man, you know, a man or whatever, which is crazy.
And Lakeisha, guess what? Sometimes that messaging is reinforced by the actual wife.
Yes.
When a husband opens up and finally has his say or complains and somehow appears to be emotional. Why are you all emotional? Are you the woman or am I the woman? Like that happens. And so that shuts him down. I'm not saying that that's you, sis. I'm just saying these are the things that happen. And it's very difficult to get a man to open up. And when he does, if he's met with resistance, judgment, criticism, whatever the case may be, he's just like, well, I gave it my chance. I gave it a try. I'm not doing that again. And so,
sometimes there's the thought process too. Something's going on, right? That's not going well. Sometimes there's a thought process. It'll get better. If we just, you know, if we just keep, you know, taking care of the business, taking care of the bills, taking care of the kids, if we just keep doing, eventually we'll make time to work on each other. It'll get better over time. We just got to keep, you know, trying to just keep going, just keep doing what we're doing, and eventually we'll have time to work on us. And that never happens. The problems just keep building and building and building until the next thing you know, somebody's looking outside the marriage for something that they need.
There it is. All right, let's go to another comment. Hassani, you called me out yesterday and I heard you, and I want to make a discovery call. Number one, would I talk to you during the call? And number two, what can I expect from an initial discovery call? Well, thank you for answering the charge, because I did call you out, but I did that in a loving way. And I thank you for taking me up on that challenge. But yes, the discovery call would be with me. And we would get on for 15 minutes. And for all of those that aren't familiar with what a discovery call is and what the purpose of it is, the purpose of it is to hear the situation and to come up with a plan of action of how to begin to move forward. It is always ideal that both spouses are on the call, because what happens is if I kind of share with you how we can go about restoring the relationship and we go through some of the services that we offer, you're forced to make either an independent decision on your own that your spouse doesn't know about, or you have to say, you know what, let me talk to my spouse and I'll get back to you. So we say, listen, why have multiple calls? Ideally, the sweet spot, you both get on the call. That way I'm able to hear from the both of you in that conversation, and collectively we can make a decision on how to move forward. A lot of times people call, they want couples counseling, and I say, well, is your spouse interested in couples counseling? Well, I don't know. Well, how could you move forward with couples counseling if you're just one party of two involved in the process? First, you have to know. So have a conversation with them. See if they're willing to at least get on a call and hear what we have to say. If you're seeking individual counseling, then yes, you call as an individual. And so what we're going to do is kind of assess your situation, come up with a plan, and give you options on how to move forward. And so I encourage you, 678-200-8996, or go to the website at couplesacademy.org and set up a discovery call. Another question. Here we go. My spouse cheated on multiple occasions, begs, but not ready to go for counseling. I find it difficult to move forward, even though he claims it will not happen again. And let me tell you, sis, what you want to do. If he wants in, but he refusing to go to counseling, well, listen, if you want in on this, if you want to move forward, there's only one pathway to get there, and that is through counseling. Because I'm going to tell you, somebody needs to hold him accountable, both of you accountable for that matter. You both need to get in the back of the car, put your seatbelt on, and allow somebody else to steer and guide the journey that you go on. You can't do it on your own. Whoever's behind the steering wheel, the other person's going to have a problem with the direction you're going in. So if you move forward without some type of assistance or help, whatever it may be, you're signing up for more of the same. And that's not what you want to do, and that's not what we want for you.
Yeah, a lot of times I believe that the spouse is genuine when they say that they'll never cheat again, but it's very difficult to not cheat again if you don't fully understand why you cheated in the first place. So part of going to counseling is to identify again how you actually got to this place. Because until you're able to identify that and you're able to identify why you cheated in the first place, the probability that you will cheat again is extremely high.
Mm-hmm.
So you go to counseling. So again, you're able to identify why you cheated, what led you to that place, and putting those parameters in place, or like Asana, you like to say, a fair proof the marriage.
Yeah.
And give you guys those tips and strategies that you need to move forward. And you cannot do that by yourself.
At all. Francisco asked a question. How do I bring up the guys who she has been friends with who were hitting on her while we were split up? Her being an 8, that's the Enneagram personality 8. I don't want it to be confrontational and it's our work day. Well, listen, you certainly don't want to have a conversation like this on your play day. You want to have it on your work day. And it's all about prefacing the conversation. We know that this is the time where we're coming together to have difficult conversations. And the reason why we want to do it in the confines of a workday is because we both know what this is about. We're going to show up as the best versions of ourselves. We're going to create a safe environment. We're not going to hopefully take things personal. We're going to be careful how we articulate what our point is so that we get the best out of the conversation, so it's a breakthrough conversation. Like, people have a high sensitivity to their feelings and their perspective, but there's got to be a space where we can tussle back and forth an opinion and a perspective so that we can come up with a resolution to this issue. There's no other better place to have it than your workday. And don't fear confrontation, or don't fear her feeling as if you're being confrontational. We all look through a particular lens. Now, if you walk in fearful and scared, first of all, 8s don't respect fear. They don't respect weakness. They respect strength. 8s, interestingly enough, want you to confront the issue head on. They have a much greater respect for those who do than those who tiptoe, tap dance, and pussyfoot around a particular issue. Mm-hmm. So you need to be bold, and you need to be courageous and loving in your approach to this conversation.
I caution you too. I get if it's something that's bothering you and you feel like it's going to be something that's going to cause division between you and your spouse, that, definitely you need to have a conversation about it. But I'm saying I caution you to be mindful when you do go into this conversation. I want you to think about why you want to have it in the first place. Because sometimes if you are the betrayer, there are times where you will have these insecurities in yourself because you did something wrong, and then you start thinking that maybe your spouse is doing something wrong, and you put all of this unnecessary heat, weight, pressure on them because of things that you were doing. So I just would encourage you to get to the root of why you want to have that conversation, and just make sure that it's coming from a healthy place.
Absolutely. Jewel says, as an 8, it's the approach. Jewel, do me a favor. I want you to, in the comments, if you would, tell Francisco what the approach should be, because you are an 8. He's involved with an 8. Give him perspective. Then Crystal says, where is that information? I'm curious. I have no clue what you're talking about. You got to clarify. But listen, guys, we've reached our time. I hope that you got something out of tonight's session. We will be back tomorrow night for another Ask the Experts. I hope it was helpful for you. And listen, have a conversation with your spouse. Share the video with your spouse. Figure out how you can make your relationship better by using this as a daily dose that'll get you through the day. Love you guys. See you soon. Take care.